Hello, everybody. It is Saturday, November 14th, and we are really pleased to talk to CJ Box today. And we're previewing interestingly enough, two things titled Sky. One is the TV series called Big Sky that is premiering. CJ will tell you all about it on Tuesday on ABC. And the other is Dark Sky, the next Joe Pickett. And it'll be premiering here on March the 1st of 2021. We've already confirmed that, and we're really excited about it. So good morning, CJ.
Good morning to you.
So
like I mentioned, we've got howling winds going on here, so viewers might hear some howling in the background.
Or you may freeze, and then we'll just power through it. So
that's right.
So I guess an obvious question would be, why suddenly do we have two things coming from you with the word sky in the title?
Well, it seems like everything in my life and career, it was not planned that way. It just happened. The TV show was initially, when it was picked up by ABC, was titled The Highway, the same as the book. And I was already at that point. In fact, you know what? When I found out about that, I was at your store in Arizona. I got a message saying that ABC had ordered a straight to series order for this new TV show, but it was called The Highway. And I was already halfway done with the next Joe Pickett book called Dark Sky. And it was only later, a couple months later, where they changed the name of the TV show to The Big Sky and then to Big Sky. And by then it was all already too late.
Well, it seems, obvious. I mean, we think about Wyoming, Montana having these wonderful big skies. So I can't argue with that. So I went back. I mean, you and I have been together since your very first book. And I think
that's right.
I lost count of how many sequential events we have done since your first Joe Pickett, but
27.
Oh, you counted. Okay.
Yes.
So 28 in March. How exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And we think of you primarily, I think many of your readers think of you as writing Wyoming because of Joe, but the truth is you have written about other places. And for example, in Blue Heaven, which came out in 2008 and for which you won your Edgar, was Idaho. And,
right.
a nest of cops living in Idaho, some of whom were behaving badly. I hate to even use the word corrupt at this point. I mean, we've heard so much of it over the last few weeks. It's a word I'm tired of. And then the first Cassie Dewell took place in, it was 2011, and that took place in Yellowstone, where you'd actually also done a really clever CJ Box, Joe Pickett book with a jurisdiction issue. But then with the Highway, you moved Cassie up to Montana. And now she's back, right? And Bitter Roots coming out last year.
Right. Although there was one book called Badlands where she was in North Dakota.
Right.
As well. So the way I kind of delineated is Joe Pickett owns Wyoming, and any other books I write are going to be out of Wyoming. I wrote one called 3 Weeks to Say Goodbye that took place in primarily Denver. Also a little bit of Montana, but the Cassie Dewell, all of those books are pretty Montana based.
So when you wrote Bitter Roots, I'm trying to remember, did you know about the TV and decide to take her private in Montana, or did you decide to write Bitter Roots and then the TV came along?
I wrote Bitter Roots and then the TV thing came along. I mean, David Kelly, who's the producer and writer of the show Big Sky, has had has owned the books for 3 years, and he bought each subsequent one, trying to find a good home for them. And originally it was gonna be a series on the Epix network, and then like you hear so many of these kind of Hollywood stories, new executives came in, they got rid of everything the old executives did, and then it went straight to ABC. So it's a lot bigger platform now. But I mean, all these things were always in the works. They just never seemed to ever be aired. But luckily, the checks always cash. So that's a good thing for an author.
Well, before we carry on more about Big Sky, there is a terrific video trailer for the book, and Patrick is geared up to show it. And I think you've already written to me that it's had over 35 million views. So we could just add to
now it's up to 50 million. I can't even believe it.
That's an awesome figure for sure. Anyway, Patrick, do you want to go ahead and show the Big Sky trailer?
Sure. Just give me one moment, if you would, just to find it. If you would go ahead and talk for a minute or two more. Let me see if I can find it. I lost
All
it.
right. Well, then I will ask CJ, did you have anything to do with the script writing, or is this one where the writing room took over and, you continued to write your books and not worry about scripts?
Well, the initial pilot teleplay that David Kelly wrote, he sent to me, and I had a few notes on it. Just it wasn't so much. I mean, understand completely. Diana Gabaldon is my North Star when it comes to this thing, and having questions about the series and how close they are to the books and so on. And I've learned a lot from her. And one of those things is that it's a totally different medium. Things are going to change. Not everything is going to be exactly like the books. I still write the books. I'm still proud of the books. There's going to be differences though. And when I saw that initial screenplay, I saw that there were some changes being made, but I thought they improved it for TV, not for the books. And David Kelly, I just trust in him. He knows what he's doing. He's done 14 or 15 television shows, and he's pretty much a one-man shop. He writes the entire thing himself without a team of writers. And my contribution is I provided the source material, and I'm happy with that.
I think that's a really sane decision. I always remember, I think it was Elmore Leonard that said, selling, might have been James Lee Burke, but I think it was Leonard said that, selling a book to Hollywood's like selling a car. They bought it, they drive it. Which
I like that too. I think I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes perfectly good sense. So Patrick, you ready now?
Just give me just 1 second. Sorry.
That's okay.
Let's see here. I'm sorry. Talk amongst yourself for a moment. I just seem to have lost it. I'll find it again, though.
All right. It's early. We all need more coffee, so to speak. All right. So how about casting, CJ? I'm just going through the list of obvious questions. Did you get to approve the casting? Did you get involved in it at all?
I did not at all. I found out the casting as it was being done, as it was being announced. And again, a lot of that was on the last book tour last March. Every day there'd be a new PR release of who the characters were. And I did talk to David Kelly quite a bit about the characters. He told me who he was trying to get. I think he was successful in everybody he had in mind. I've seen the pilot, and I think he did a great job. I think the characters really come to life, and I'm very happy with it.
Well, I think we can certainly see from Outlander, and obviously, you've been down here and met Diana and talked to her, and your wife is a serious Diana Gabaldon fan.
Yes, she is.
Yep. I thought the genius there was that they took two, relatively unknown people, one of them particularly unknown. And that meant that nobody came to view the finished, the actual TV having preconceptions about the actor or being familiar with them in other roles. I mean, we lost Sean Connery recently, and bottom line is it's pretty hard to see Sean Connery in anything and not think of James Bond. But that's right. Not the case with, Katrina and Sam. Sam had some experience. We didn't know them. So they have become Jamie and Claire in a way I think would have been almost impossible if they'd had previous roles that were huge.
I think that's a very good point. And in Big Sky, there are a few names that are familiar. Ryan Felipe as Cody Hoyt is somebody, at least my daughters were quite excited when they saw that casting decision. The other people, there's a couple of character actors I think that are familiar, but at least the rest are not familiar to me, although they might be familiar to some viewers.
Well, before we talk to Michael, and at Dana Stavenow's urging, because she's here on her winter sabbatical, we rewatched The Lincoln Lawyer. Again, when
Ah.
McConaughey was not so well known, but it also realized that Ryan Felipe is the villain in the Lincoln Lawyer.
I'd
So,
forgotten that.
yeah, it'll be interesting. Anyway, here comes Patrick because I think he's figured it out. Yay.
I don't have volume.
No, I don't either. Well, we'll just have to watch the visuals here because there doesn't seem to be any sound.
It's a very innovative concept, a silent television show.
The only way we're going to find these girls.
So was there no sound?
Oh, there wasn't any
There was
sound.
no sound.
However, this may spur anybody watching it to go and find it on YouTube, and certainly won't be any spoilers for
No.
Tuesday night. So tell us a bit more about Cassie for people who are not familiar with her. Why did you decide to write about a female? And I know you have daughters and a wife who are a huge part of your life. So you've always said that you don't have any trouble writing about women because you're knee deep in them all the time.
That's right. And a female agent and a female editor for these books. It came pretty easily. Surprisingly, when I first, I was a little kind of nervous when I first gave the manuscript to my wife and my daughters. And it was kind of like the dog that didn't bark. They all had comments about the book, but none of them said a woman wouldn't do this, say this, think this. And so I thought I got it right. Somebody asked me once about that, how can you write from the point of view of a woman? And my answer was, they're just like people, aren't they? So it's not that hard. I think sometimes male authors tend to over-sexualize women characters and make them more action figures than realistic women. And I tried not to do that. Cassie in the books is kind of self-conscious about her appearance and her abilities. She goes along, she's a hard worker, but she doesn't have any real special insight into things. She just moves along, but she's very tough in a way, in that she won't allow herself to get snowed by anybody. And she just goes ahead. And I think hopefully that will be portrayed in the TV show, but it certainly is portrayed that way in the books. And I'm looking forward to getting back to writing another Cassie book next year.
So when we first met Cassie, she had a partner, right? Or at least a co-investigator. And
Well, it was Cody Hoyt.
Right.
That was her mentor. Yeah, she was a cop and he was a deputy in Helena, Montana, and she kind of worked under him, and then later just sort of took over the whole series.
Yes. Right. Well, we won't go in and create any spoilers about all that. So what was your decision to take her back to Montana after she'd been, over in North Dakota and down in Denver and so forth, and retire her from official law enforcement and send her private?
Well, I've always wanted to write a PI kind of novel. I like them. I'm a big fan of them. I have always been, and I thought it would be really interesting to, get her out of uniform and have her investigate on her own, because then she doesn't have any kind of backup. It's kind of similar to the Joe Pickett character in that these are people who are kind of out in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming and Montana, without a lot of backup and without a lot of official support systems, and they're on their own. And I think that makes for a much more interesting dilemma in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm a huge PI novel fan too. And in fact, in the unrelenting wave of domestic suspense coming our way, I found myself this fall absolutely drawn to all police procedural and PI novels rather than, these domestic dramas, which also depend upon clever twists and, strange psychology. And I found myself in the mess that we've had all fall on all fronts, really craving the greater certainty of the procedural and PI sort, where, an investigation moves along. It tends to follow rules. It's more linear, so you have some idea what's happening. The drawback, I think, in creating a PI novel, CJ, is that you have to have some way to bring in actual law enforcement, because the PI lacks the power of arrest, which, Cassie had as a cop. So what did you decide to do about that? Because it's an important part of getting to the end and achieving the right result.
It is, but I really like, especially in Bitterroot, the book that came out last year, where she's, a full private investigator. The dilemma there, which was fun to write about, is that she's kind of on the other side. She's dealing with some small town cops that she thinks might be corrupt, not just corrupt, but really dirty. So she's very uncomfortable going after cops because she still thinks of herself as one. So I think that adds to it, is that she knows how good cops should act and how they should behave, and she's dealing with some that are not that way. So she's got some real ethical problems in that book.
Well, that's true, but it's an interesting and different perspective. Flashing back to the Lincoln Lawyer, at book 3, Michael moved Mickey Haller into the prosecutorial side, and that didn't work for him. He's a defense lawyer to his bone, so he moved back again. But at least it allowed Michael a shift, in perspective through Mickey at looking at it that way, which I think is fascinating. So The Highway is the first book that is adapted to Big Sky. Are they going to, if she's private, what are they going to ignore the other books and move right to Bitterroot, or are they going to circle over to North Dakota and Denver and come back?
I think the idea is to incorporate 2 books and storylines from 2 books into the first season. And then if there are future seasons, continue to do that. They have all of the Cassie Dewell books. And I know that David Kelly is a particular fan of the Cassie books set in North Dakota. I don't know if they'll move her, but I think they'll incorporate some of the storylines.
Well, I mean, she could function as the PI. I mean, there's questions of licensing and other stuff, but it's not like she can't go to North Dakota on a PI case.
That's right.
That would be interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about Dark Sky, which, as I said, again, its official pub date is March 2nd. CJ will be with us on March 1st, and he's going to kindly autograph the book for us, as he has done for every one of his books, which is wonderful for you fans who've been collecting them all these years. So what can you tell us about Joe? Just a little preview.
But on this book, what's really odd about it is when I started writing the book, I really wanted to strip everything way down, back, like strip it down to the studs of Joe Pickett. And I obviously didn't intend it as kind of an isolation pandemic novel, but that's what it turned out to be. And that's how it was intended. But in Dark Sky, the premise is that Joe Pickett is asked by the governor of Wyoming to guide a high-tech billionaire on an elk hunt. The billionaire is very eccentric, the type kind of based on some real life tech moguls who want to do things, and experience things on their own. And this guy has decided to devote an entire year to obtaining his own food in one way or another. So he wants to go elk hunting. So Joe Pickett takes him and his entourage into the mountains where things go horribly wrong. And Joe finds himself with this tech billionaire and people after them without weapons or communication or horses. And it's a very, very basic kind of wilderness story that could have taken place in 1820. And so it was really fun to strip it all down like that and really put Joe Pickett through the ringer in this one.
Well, of course, everything went horribly wrong.
Yes.
That was always going to be among the first words out of your mouth once they got up there to the mountains. It's interesting, when we were driving down to visit you, I remember going by a field of windmills, and I was irresistibly reminded of your Joe Pickett, in which Missy in particular, and Joe, the windmill is a major, I don't want to do any spoilers. Anyway, it's a major player in the story. And I like the way that, you bring in landscapes and landmarks of Wyoming, but you also bring in contemporary issues by doing something like putting wind energy right front and center in the story. So this is interesting. If you're, instead of going modern Wyoming, you are in fact dropping back to very early Wyoming.
That's right.
But that keeps you
But there still
right?
are, it does. And there still are, I always have kind of a contemporary issue in each book. And in this case, it's social media. And the high-tech guy defending his company against some people who hate him and hate it because of what's been on it. So there's kind of that internal debate going on throughout, as if this is a good thing or a bad thing, and how much responsibility high tech should take for the things that they host.
Well, good for you. I have very hostile feelings towards Twitter part of the time, so I can certainly understand why it would be an interesting thing. And in fact, in either the Times or the Journal, the Wall Street Journal this morning, I can't remember which one I read it in, one of the things they talked about was how Twitter would be treating various leaders once they are no longer leaders, whether the widespread latitude that they have allowed will continue when people are private persons. And I think that's an interesting question that the tech community.
It is, and it's a very hard one to answer. I mean, are these companies publishers or are they hosts? And they claim to be one thing, but sometimes they're another. And I'm a big free speech advocate, and that's one of the issues in the book.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an extremely free speech. The First Amendment has been one of the trickiest of all the Bill of Rights to figure out from time immemorial. And, the famous dictum about, free speech does not allow you to shout fire in a crowded room. You have to ask yourself how literally that should be applied, especially right today where you can pour gasoline on any number of things. Virtual gasoline anyway. So good for you. I think that's terrific. Patrick, do we have questions from anybody that you want to forward to us?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, I have a question for you, Chuck, just to start out with. Have you ever considered, since the land and the history of the land is such a huge part of your books, have you ever thought, and I know we're both big students of, frontier history and all that good stuff. Have you ever thought about writing, your publisher will probably say, no, don't do that, but a purely historical novel, about, perhaps the ancestors of some of your major characters?
I have thought about it, and it's something someday I want to do. But I'm fascinated, for example, with the Mountain Men era, and I'd love to write a novel someday set in that period. But like you said, publishers aren't so keen on that idea, breaking out that differently. And even now with the 2 series going and 2 different publishers, I really find it difficult to find the time to do something totally different than either the Cassie Dewell or the Cody Hoyt books. But someday I'd like to do that. That's a dream of mine. I have a whole bookshelf full of reference materials I want to use when I get to that. I just haven't been able to find the time. Maybe I will now, since I'm not traveling and I'm so far ahead of the game. But I'm working on the next Joe Pickett right now, the book after Dark Sky. So maybe I'll have some time then.
Well, you do kind of salt in quite a bit of history in your contemporary books as it is. You give us little bits of that. And then in some of the shorter stories, Dull Knife and some of the other pieces you've done, you've incorporated a lot of that material. Okay, so questions from the audience here. Okay, here's kind of a basic writing question about your quote process. Can you tell us a little bit about when you write, how much a day you write? What do you have a daily goal that you shoot for, word count, that kind of thing?
I do. The whole process kind of starts with, the issues, the things I usually have 2 or 3 major plot lines going through every book. And once I decide on those, I do the research on them. And when I'm comfortable with that, then I build an outline from basically page 1 through the end, bullet point outlines. Sometimes those outlines are 20, 30, 40 pages long. And then I start writing on top of the outline. And I write every day. I try to get a minimum of 1,000 words done every day. Some days it's 2,000, some days it's 4,000. And then I just keep pushing through, and simply because I have an outline doesn't mean I'm going to stick to it. I've changed endings, I've taken wild diversions, but at least that way, when I sit down every day, I have a basic idea of where I want to go, and it makes it a lot easier. And so I write, and then I start the next morning out and edit what I wrote the day before, add to it, and then push on from there. That's my process.
Okay, let's see here. Somebody named Robin is asking about, and maybe you've already touched on this, but any chance that the Joe Pickett books will be made into a TV series as well?
Yes, a very good chance. I think there's going to be some big announcements this winter. I know it's going forward once they start casting, and it's definitely, there will be one. I have promised the producers not to say anything about it specifically until they're ready to announce it.
Okay, there are a couple of people asking about, just about the process of translating your material into TV or movie. And do you have any reservations about it in terms of this gentleman, Mark, says Clive Cussler had a really bad experience. Are you concerned about that at all, or?
I have been concerned about that. And at one point, there were a group of producers who had the Joe Pickett series, and we could tell that they had plans to take it a totally different direction than the books. And when I say we, my wife, my agent, and I figured out how to get out of that deal. I don't have those same concerns with David Kelly or the people who are working on the Joe Pickett series. They've embraced the books. In both cases, they're planning on going book by book as the series progresses. Like I said, it's a totally different medium, but I have to trust them, and I do. And my end goal really is, I consider the books commercial, or the shows commercials for the books. and hopefully it will draw more readers who haven't read any of the books to the books. And if that happens, then it's a success. We all know that no TV show is ever exactly like the books, but hopefully they create interest.
And it's important to remember too that the books are still the books. They're still there on the shelf and still available to read, regardless of whatever the TV
That's
has
right.
done. And with Joe, you've got a huge backlog of books. With Cassie, there are fewer books. So, there's
Correct.
and it's interesting too. I'm thinking about Anne Cleeves, her Shetland series, which is such glorious television, one of my very favorites. But she stopped writing it. But the TV people are going to carry on, as I understand it, and create more Shetlands without the books, to work from. So I think once you sell a character to television, they can do that.
That's right.
There's some contractual ban. So, it's interesting. It could be that the Joe Picketts with more books might not have as many as the Cassie Dewell with fewer books, but if it catches on, could have more television. You can't ever predict that.
That's right. That's right. And either series can be canceled in a heartbeat. I know that too. And I'm prepared for that to happen. Luckily, they can't cancel me writing more books.
No, indeed. Patrick, any more?
Yeah. Well, this is just a really nice comment. A woman named Dorothy says, I found CJ from my dad when he began to read as he was less able to participate in his hobbies. He was a hunter and made trips to the West to hunt. And he so enjoyed your books tremendously. Pop is gone now, but Mother and I continue to enjoy your books. That's a really nice comment. Let's see.
And I really love that. Yeah. I was just going to say, one of the greatest things is for me as a writer is that the books seem to be embraced by both men and women, and at different ages. I could tell that from the events, like at Poison Pen and other places where dads would show up with daughters and husbands and wives are both fans. That's kind of unusual. And I think it's really great. And I love that.
Susan asks, will Missy be back?
Of course. Yeah, she's too mean to die. She's not going to be in the next book particularly, but no doubt she'll show up in future ones. She always shows up at the wrong time when Joe Pickett is at his lowest. No doubt that will happen again.
Okay, let's see. Darla asks, does having a TV show about the books change your way of writing the next upcoming books?
Not at all. I've already, I think there's some writers who have kind of fallen to that, but I don't plan to. They're totally separate. I've got the plot for the next Cassie Dewell book in mind already, and it has nothing to do with the series at all. And I still envision that character as the character I wrote, not the one that's on the screen.
It's funny. I've had a couple of people online just say, thanking you for your books and that how much they've helped them get through this crazy year that we've had, this crazy quarantine period. And Barbara and I have actually heard that from quite a few authors, with long running series.
I've heard that as well.
That really has helped everybody get through this time. Right, Barbara?
I've heard.
Oh. Sorry, CJ,
yeah, I've heard
go
from,
first.
I've heard from readers as well who have written and said they've been waiting, they've been planning on reading the books at some point, and over the last few months they've read 27 of them. And so it's weird how it's kind of been a strange benefit. I know it's hard to track sales, but I know they're up.
Well, what we've seen is people buying an entire set of books so that they can start at the beginning. These are clearly people who are new to you, because people who aren't have already read those. And it's across all different kinds of fiction. We see it with science fiction, we see it with romance, where there happens to be a sequence, although much of romance is, standalone, because the story ends, either girl courts boy, loses boy, and then wins boy, or boy courts girl and the other way around. But we've really noticed it with some of these long series that, and sadly I have to say, CJ, it's really lucky that, or not lucky, it's wonderful that all of your books are in print, but we have run into cases where authors who've got a lot of earlier books where they're just not available right now, possibly only digitally. So, sometimes we have to say to them that we can't supply a printed book, which always breaks our hearts, but realistically, that's the way it is. Do you know another really nice thing that's happened is there's a gentleman who can only read digitally. He has some kind of sight disability or something, but he wrote to say that he so much enjoyed all our virtual events and how much he learned from them that he wanted to make a donation to the bookstore. And how could we do that? And so we told him that he could do that over PayPal. And he made a very hefty donation, which we used to buy new speakers for our video programs. And then I was able to write him a thank you note and say that his donation had enhanced our ability to provide better video. And I thought,
That's terrific.
it really is. I think a lot of people don't really understand that virtual events do require economic underpinnings. This is not just a free for all for everybody. So I was really delighted with him, and I hope that
That's great.
people who find you on TV, I hope it will occur to them to buy your books as well.
So do I.
Of course you do. Right, Patrick, any more?
Not really. Just a lot of excuse me, a lot of people just making comments about how much they love your books and things of that nature. I don't see any more. People are very excited about the TV show, and that's about it, really.
All righty. Well, the TV starts as you've seen.
Well, I want to.
Starts Tuesday, right?
8 p.m.
Tuesday on ABC. Yes.
Wonderful. And
Eastern
I will sign
time,
off
yep.
by saying that while we have done, as CJ pointed out, 27 events together, well, actually more because we've done some ancillary events. This is the very first one we've done with CJ wearing a baseball hat and not his signature black hat. But I have to say, I'm grateful because we wouldn't have been able to see your face under your cowboy hat on the video screen.
Yes, yes.
Very good.
And my hat would have blown off my head today. Anyway.
Well, so you're not going fishing when this is over?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, CJ, for this. And
no, it's too cold and windy.
Yeah, I figured it probably was. Let us thank all the people who are watching it. And we thank CJ for spending some time with us and Patrick for interrupting us Saturday morning to make it all happen. So
yeah,
everybody.
It's kind of funny that that here we are. I'm here at my house, Barbara's at her home, CJ's at home in Wyoming. And also just to let people know with our virtual events, what Barbara was talking about, it's amazing how much we've managed to accomplish with one crappy cell phone. And we've since really, just yesterday, we had a big advance in our little sound system, thanks to Barbara's husband, Rob. And so going forward, I think you're going to see a much higher quality of audio. So brave new world, eh?
It really is. I should also mention for those of you watching that this talk will become a podcast that you can listen to or you can recommend other people listen to. And this is on Facebook Live, but Patrick at some point soon will post this Zoom event on our YouTube channel. So there's a variety of ways that you can both experience it yourself and recommend it to your friends. And that is a tremendous advantage of this technology. We've always, well, since 1995, we have done video events. And I think, CJ, almost all of your events at the Poison Pen have ended up on Facebook video. But this is a new and more dramatic way of doing it. So that's been terrific. Well, okay, so we can all do a round of goodbye again.
All right.
Enjoy
Goodbye.
the rest
Thank
of your
you.
weekend. Bye.
Thanks for everything.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.